Um,
Phone? Thanks, bud.
I don't get to myself. Well, how do I look?
Look handsome. But you don't need the hat.
Well, my hair's messed up though.
I think you look nice. Looks great. All right. Welcome back to Eris explaining to Francis some of the vocabulary he's tried to come up with to make it a little bit easier to talk about the mind. In the first video, in the intro, we had talked about the ego myth, which is the idea that there is this single self, and then the id and the superego, or the biases, whatever, then plays with that single self. And then the judge myth was the idea that it's basically the same thing, is that thinking that there is a single judge who hears all of the different thoughts and processes and then makes an informed and reasonable decision for an action, for a belief, etc. So the ego myth, the self doesn't exist. And certainly not in the form of some reasonable judge. Okay? Now, the reason I chose Emmy is because yesterday I did I did an Emmy. Yesterday I was in the video. I was making a video where we were talking, and I said that there is when we were talking about I and C in yesterday's video, I said that there is a mechanism that makes it difficult for us to say when someone else is right, or when we have understood something that we didn't previously understand, or when we believe something that we didn't previously believe. And that's not necessarily accurate. It's not as though there's some pure soul, some ego who would love to admit that we're wrong, and then we have some stupid brain mechanism that interferes. Actually, it's possible that the brain mechanism that would, admit error, for instance, just not that strong, and also, why would it be? Part of the way that society, or that humans evolved, it's to have a whole bunch of competing parts saying, this is what's right, this is what's right, this is what's right, and then hopefully the bust decision happens. And that's the same thing in our brain. It's a whole bunch of different mechanisms saying, this is what's right, this is what's right. Anyway, but back to the Emmy. So I did an Emmy because I supposed that there was some central ego to whom we can attribute all of our ideals, our intellectual ideals, our moral values, and then I just blamed it on some brain mechanism interfering with the admission of error. So that was an Emmy. There was another Emmy, no, that wasn't an Emmy, so that's not, okay. So anyway, so there you go, that's an Emmy. It's just an instance of supposing the ego myth, an instance of supposing that you are an entity that exists in your brain or in your body or whatever. That there is some central figure that represents you and your perspective, and then you interact with your brain, or you interact with other parts of your brain or whatever. Any time there is maybe a piece of the brain that represents your perspective at that time, or your whatever, that keeps changing. The spotlight keeps moving, if you will. Okay? And then a Jummy is to suppose the judge myth. So my example for the Emmy is, oh, my bad. That was a total Emmy. I Emmy'd hard, bro. My bad. Of course, there is no central controller that we might consider the ego, and yet I said I was influenced by my biases, which is kind of a meaningless statement. And then Palma is a word that we'll see later. All right, so now for the example for a Jumi. Yo, now that I think about it, that was low-key a Jumi. I interpreted his actions as being the result of a reasonable deliberation, as though by some informed judge in his mind. But for all I know, that action was just one of the voices in the courtroom. It may not have been approved of by the whole courthouse. There was no judge that's vetting everything that goes on. So, yo, my bad, that was a Jumi. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this just gives us a way to, because the brain does this. The brain Jumis and Emmies all the time, because it thinks of itself as though this single reasonable spirit. And so it's good to be able to just go, oh, wait, I think that might be an Emmy. Because I Emmy all the time. And I would love to not be doing it. I would love to not even use the word I.
Can we use the word us?
Yeah, so we can say we. Yeah, something. I don't know what to do to...
The royal we, yeah, okay.
The royal we. So anyway, there you go. So that's an Emmy and a Jumi.
Okay, very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions?
So in terms of the voices, we may have several competing voices considering an action, and there's no central control over which one wins out. It's
right.
just one will win out.
Right.
And that particular voice, there is no judge saying, oh, you deserve to win.
Yeah, and there's no judge that... So even like saying considering, we might find isn't accurate, saying that these voices are considering. It looks like considering, but really they're just interacting. They're just competing. It's just a sort of a domino thing, right? And and so there's no central thing that hears all of these things and can consider these different options. One of them's just going to beat the other ones out.
So if you ask me to make a decision on something, and I may say to you, well, hold on, I've got to let the dust settle here. Okay, now I made the decision. And
so, yeah, and dust settle, that's a great way to put it. I don't think I've done thraining yet and threshing. Have I? No, I don't think so. Threshing is a word that I prefer to
we can come on to that. Right?
We'll come on to that.
Yes.